So I'm here to talk to you a little bit about how we're going to make GWT easy for everyone. But before I start, I want to ask you all, how many of you use GWT today? Just one? How many of you are here to learn about GWT? Okay. A lot of you. So I'm a new GWT user myself. New as in about 6 months old. And what I found is it was hard to find good components in GWT, and that's what we're going to talk about today, right? Let's do a view of the normal view. And what I wanted to show as part of this presentation, this is one that I did at Java 1 just 2 weeks ago, was how you can use jMaki. That's a framework I've talked about in 2 other sessions today. Has anyone gone to those 2 sessions? All right, so enough of you here, you understand what it is. It's a way of basically consistently defining JavaScript. And because we know how to consistently define that JavaScript, we can actually expose these components in GWT. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually contrast the 2 models. And then based on that, we're going to show you how we can take things like our charts that we've spent a lot of effort into doing in jMaki, and how we can actually expose those as GWT components. On top of that, I'm also going to show you how we did a sample application in GWT and also in plain old JavaScript, and kind of the differences between it. On the plain old JavaScript side, we're using jMaki for it, and it's actually a pet store that I did with one of the original people from the pet store team at Sun. So let's talk a little bit about my background, and let's make sure we get things done on time. So I'll go a little bit quicker through the slideshow. And then we'll spend a little bit more time on demos. So the goal, learn how to put more AJAX in your GWT. So the biggest issue I saw with GWT, no components. So how are we going to increase that? Well, we can use jMaki and the effort we put into that to do that. So anyone that's seen my other talks will know jMaki is open source. We expose all these different toolkits. What else? We have different support for different server-side technologies, but on top of that, we can also include it in other things in Java. It's very easy to do. GWT is a very Java-centric type thing, and I've got a slide that will talk about the costs and benefits of that. Some of our key value points: we hide the complexity of JavaScript. We write portable widget libraries. We are JSON-based. We have a programming model associated with it. On top of that, we easily integrate things like Google Gears, Flash, Google Maps, Yahoo Maps, all those different things. And we encourage the reusable JavaScript. And this is the key point where binding this to GWT makes sense, because they're trying to solve almost the exact same problem. And what I can do is I can talk about the jMaki model, or we can jump into GWT. Any preferences? Do you want to know more about the model stuff? Yes? No? Okay, we got a jMaki model first. So as far as widgets go, our widgets are all defined in the exact same way. This is the jMaki way. We have a component.css, component.js. There's a third component here called a widget.json. And that file is used by the tools and things like our GWT inclusion mechanism, where we actually define dependencies. So if you're a Yahoo data table, this file will tell you all the Yahoo files that widget is dependent on. We can basically use those dependent files and then generate the GWT. They have a complementary thing called the gwt.xml file. There's actually almost a one-for-one mapping for one of these different things. This is a component, a hello world component. And if I was to write this by hand, this is all it would take. Very simple to write. In this case, this is your JavaScript. This is how you define it in a JSP page. And we've got a little template associated with it. If you want, you can also add styling. Very easy to do. What we focused on with jMaki from the start was making components easy to write. The fact that I can put a full component in a page should say something. We want it to be really easy. And I'll show you a similar thing in GWT in a few minutes. All right. jMaki also, the reason it integrates so well with GWT is we have events. So we have got widgets that need to talk to widgets. Those widgets, more than likely, are going to be not tied together. So when you write them, you don't know that you've got a table component and a menu component controlling each other, or fisheye. So we created a publish subscribe mechanism in the page. So you can have tons of widgets that can be from different toolkits. What jMaki provides are wrapped instances of those different widgets, and they publish and subscribe to the same topics. We also put the same data payload inside of those publish methods, and that allows us to actually have consistency. Regardless of whether you're Yahoo or Dojo, it's going to publish the same. You can select on a table row, for example, and publish the same information regardless of what the underlying implementation is. It's almost, in a sense, like Java, but for JavaScript, where you've got many toolkits and you've got one way of writing. So we really have a lot more. We also have to consider browsers too, so that is a big job we do. So if you've seen one of my other presentations today, our recipe is very similar, regardless of the toolkit. In AMP or Eclipse, and that means you basically choose a layout, you choose the widgets in the page, and then you'll bind those to your services. GWT's has got the exact same model behind it. And of course, you've got the test. The way I get around this in most cases is we do this iteratively. So I add a widget, I reload the page. It's a back and forth, kind of almost like a ballet. So GWT. Wow, this almost looks exactly the same as jMaki. So the funny thing about GWT is it came out a week after jMaki. So we were created as far as projects, literally a week apart. And because it was Google, they got a lot of attention. And I'm very glad that jMaki came out the week before, because otherwise no one would have even known who we are. We're 2 years old now. Both toolkits are 2 years old now. If you notice, they're very similar in the sense that they also have an open source license. When the toolkit came out, they didn't have an open source license. They got a lot of criticism. And very quickly, they open sourced it. In the case of GWT, it's really focused at Java developers. So it's Java-centric. You use the Java programming language to define what your AJAX behavior is. And that's a big difference, because the idea is to hide the developers from JavaScript, but in this case, this Java is really not going to bytecode. It's going into JavaScript and CSS. So what the Google Web Toolkit does, you run this through a compile process, and it's got a way of generating browser neutral and very performant JavaScript. Very, very interesting to see what they've done. So the compiler is where they put a lot of their effort. They've got a big team behind them. So what else do they do? Why use it? They handle the browser compatibilities. They do optimized code, and they can actually do that for given browsers. They provide that continuous development, much like what you've seen with jMaki, if you've seen my other presentations. You can continue to develop, and even though it's Java code, it gets recompiled as you're working, and you see it right away. And that's really important, especially developing these new applications where you're doing a lot of small tweaking. No need to learn a new language. This is probably the biggest, along with using the tool of your choice. These are the two biggest things that people tend to like JWT for, because you can still use your NetBeans, you can still use your Eclipse, you can still have all the code completion and the other documentation facilities, the auto-completion, I already mentioned that, the checking and all the other things your tool provides, and you're getting it in the same way that you've always been used to. At the same time, you're able to do web applications. So no complexity, and you also can get reusable. They have a way of deploying libraries of widgets, just like we do with jMaki. In this case, it's done as a set of Java plus JavaScript jar files. I'll tear one of these apart and show you. So let me, rather than talk about it, let's actually generate, since we're all here just to see more about GWT, let me generate a GWT application. So let's start my NetBeans here. All right, so what I'm going to do is create a GWT application from scratch. So much like I did with jMaki, I'm going to create a web application. You can do the same process using the GWT tools themselves, or you can do it in Eclipse. Since I work with the NetBeans team, I'm going to show you how we can do it in NetBeans. So instead of adding jMaki here, I'm adding GWT, and on top of that, I'm pointing at where I have installed the GWT. This has got the compiler and the different components. And then you give it basically the package name of the component you're going to develop. And I'm just going to leave everything as is. I'm going to develop an application, which, cross our fingers, I haven't had great luck with some of my demos today. I'm going to create a default application that's going to have all the things that I, as a GWT developer, need to worry about. So one of them is the HTML file. This is the first thing that pops up. Now you can put a little bit of styling around this, but it's a little bit limited. You also have this GWT XML file. Now this is an application level file that's very similar to what we have in our individual widgets. So this is going to define the inherits, basically, are the things that your application depends on. And later, when we add jMaki to this, it's going to inherit the jMaki widgets too. Basically, it's a way of bringing in a module inside of GWT. In this case, this is just inheriting the normal behavior of GWT, and it's telling it where the main class is. The tool generated this for us. GWT compiler popped up, if you saw down there at the bottom. So NetBeans is basically getting GWT to load that. Doesn't look like, oh, it's telling me Tomcat port is in use, so let me shut that down. Or, it's actually what I'll do, change the port. Okay. Great. All right, let's see if I have the port set right. Oh, it's recompiling. That's what you're seeing down here. Keep in mind that Java code does not go to bytecode, it's going to JavaScript, so that's why you're seeing that little compiler come up. And when I click here, it's setting the hello GWT to be visible or non-visible. All right, that's the model. If you saw me do a jMaki application today, I did the exact same thing. In this case, it's more Java code centric. Where did my presentation go? There we go. Oh. I didn't set a layout in this case. The main entry point had a root panel, much like a Swift GUI would have. That's the way I interact with it. I could add like a border layout or something to it and do much like I would have done in jMaki where I selected a CSS-based layout. What happens under the covers is GWT basically going to create a table. Inside of that, it's going to set the size on it. You don't see a lot of the details underneath the cover. They consider these containers, so you've got like tab keys, buttons, and other things that you're using. And as you saw, the compilation underneath the covers all happen pretty much automatically. And if you're using the runtime that comes with GWT, it actually happens even as you modify and save your Java code. Very useful. You already saw this file. This is the configuration file. This is very important. If you don't have this set right, things aren't going to work. We already saw the adding of a widget. I could add a jMaki widget in this case, and that's what you'll see when we end up later. So why use these two things together? Well, rather than just have buttons, wouldn't you like to have Yahoo buttons or these fisheye components or data tables? We have provided access to a lot more sophisticated JavaScript that's been written by other people. So my hope is that there's a lot of good stuff out there, and to take advantage of basically all the different things out there. But I guess before we talk about that, let's look at the contrast slide. Okay. Whenever I talk to a GWT developer, this always comes up. The big difference between the two: one is strong type, one has JavaScript type. In the case of jMaki, the model, the actual widget model, is a strong model in the sense that it's well defined how a widget gets initialized, and that's the way we're able to actually do the integration. This life cycle is extremely important. And of course, we've done the pre-wrapping a lot. I think GWT really benefits from the great developer experience and also having a very familiar programming model. So marrying the two is actually really useful type thing. Here's a widget that we created as part of the jMaki Pet Store demo. and we have this, and I'll show this in just a minute. And basically what we do is we can extend any widget that we've got in jMaki, and actually we have a Java base class. And basically you just give it the name of the base class, and then under the covers, all the widget gets initialized for you. And there's actually a little bit more to that base class than you'd expect. Let me show you on my file system what I'm talking about. What I need here is my favorites window open. I'm going into my workspace, and I'm going to show you a portion of a really cool project that I worked on. So those of you that were in my talk earlier today know that I used to work on the Blueprints team, so I helped do the initial pet store demo. Well, the Blueprints team is no more. Some people went to other divisions in Sun, and some went to Google itself. So what we did is a few of us got together and we said, well, you know, you're working at Google, I'm working at Sun, how can we make these two things work together? As far as Google is concerned, you know, there are different divisions and organizations there. So part of what we were trying to do is show how to use the Google checkout functionality from both JSP and GWT, and this application is the result of that. So we've got a GWT web app here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to build it and deploy it. I'll show you what it looks like first, and then I'm going to show you the code. I'm going to run target, build widgets, and then we'll just run the core. What this is doing is it's from the command line using ant, building the application. And let me run GWT. This is the main class, and then all I need to do now is finish this building. If I remember correctly, jMaki, GWT. What this has done is this has taken two of our widgets and we recreated the pet store, so I can go through any one of these and add it to the cart. Pretty nifty. The way we did this was we took our existing widgets here and we wrapped them. Here's the main entry point, and this will provide a GWT layout. Can we all see this, or do you want me to up the font? Is it good enough? Good. All right. So basically, we created widgets around our accordion menu widget and the eyebrows widget. These are both jMaki widgets, and also we created a cart widget, and we added these to a layout. Very easy to do, and these widgets are actually pulled in as a library, so as it's set. So this library is just a jar file. And we're able to look through the information on this. If you create a jar file in GWT, it looks kind of like this, where it's got a main entry. Actually, that's the application. So let me show you. When you're doing integration with widgets, this is very important. Now, if you want to do this yourself with things that aren't jMaki, like a Yahoo widget, there's a blog that Carla Mott, my co-lead, just did last week. And I can give you a link where you can look at jMaki.com. It's one of the first links. So she explains how she did her first widget. But it's basically this. You need to put the JavaScript dependencies. Normally, this is what the server's going to do for you. And then after you do that, basically, well, actually, you also need to put jMaki here. And this is inside the GWT XML file. Beyond that, all you need to do is provide a base class for the widget, and I'm going to show that right here. In the case of the iBrowser, it's pretty simple. It's just like what I showed on the slide. It's built on a base class we have. It's jMaki iBrowser, and I'm, in this case, just calling the superclass and passing in the parameters that we're given. The real work happens in this class. And this is something that you, as a developer, even in GWT, don't want to deal with. So this jMaki widget class is what really does all the hard working under the covers. So if you've worked with GWT, you'll know that there's an interface to JavaScript called JSNI, JSNI. And what we've done under the covers is we're using that interface and define things in JavaScript as comments that actually work with the underlying event system of jMaki that will actually plug in, and as things are happening in the runtime, it'll do things like, in this case, you see the widget is getting loaded. It's very hard to read here, but basically it's saying, when you get the jMaki event saying widget's loaded, then make sure that this widget has been initialized correctly in the GWT way. So we've plugged the two life cycles together, and things can happen consistently because jMaki has a very defined life cycle when things get created and when things get loaded. In this case, it's making sure that the GWT components do the same. And you as a developer, if you're going to have jMaki widgets, all you need to do is implement this base class. And of course, you do need the jMaki widgets initially, but we've got a whole set of things that you can use as starting points. And then just integrate. Here is the cart. So I mean, it's really that simple. Now, there are some cases where you're going to want to expose things more than just the APIs you've got here. So what we've done is, and I'll show this as the last demo, we've taken the charting widgets that we have that we've actually want to expose more Java APIs to. So, for example, you want data sets, you want to have axes for X and Y axis, and also legends and other things that will get exposed in Java. So the biggest choices that you need to make if you're going to integrate using this methodology is, what do I expose to the Java developer? And I think that's a much easier thing to do than to actually go through and deal with all the JavaScript and loading it. Because coming from my background, where I've worked with a lot of JavaScript, it's actually a lot of work to integrate that the first time. And you don't want to do this for every component that you're going to do in GWT. I don't think you'd want to do that. There are a couple projects, I must say. There is the EXT, GWT, and the GWT EXT. They got reverse names. So some people have put a little effort into it, but it is very specific to those two libraries. So, but if you want to use something other than them, like the Yahoo and the Dojo, I haven't seen much progress happen on those. And also, I haven't seen anything as sophisticated as about what I'm going to show you. All right. Let's jump back in the slides for one moment. We've already showed you how all this works. And I already showed you this source code, so this is the iBrowser readable text. So you've got the source here, and I will also, all the code you're seeing here is part of two different open source projects, both of which you can access from jMaki.com. If you want to see this, you can find all the source today. I'll actually point you at the document on how you can recreate this next example. One of my favorite things to do other than jMaki is charting. I love to do pie charts, bar charts, line charts. As far as a developer goes, it's the most visual thing that you can do, and it's also a very difficult thing to do. And I think that's why I've liked it so much, is trying to integrate the different charting APIs from a lot of different libraries out there and do it in a consistent way. It's always been fun. What you have to know about charting, there's a lot of people that have already done a lot of the core work on it. So other than this jMaki, there's Dojo has charting APIs, Google has charting APIs, Yahoo has charting APIs, and there's also something called Plotkit, all of which are free and open source. So bringing these in is not that difficult. The nice thing about these is they're all done compliant as far as rendering goes. So if you want to upload some of your server rendering, you can do that. And most of these will actually work in other clients such as iPhones. The biggest thing about these is you can update the charts without reloading the page. If you came to one of my earlier demos today, I'm going to show you how to do that in GWT. So here's the layering. The approach I took was, in this case, I combined these two things. So right now, it's actually the jMaki chart is the core widget, but I want to layer it on top of that jMaki widget class we showed. It's basically the same code. And what we've done is, on top of that, we've created a pie chart class. We've also created a dataset class, and what else? A dataset and an axis, and an axes, plural, class to represent what the two axes and then the individual axes would be. We've done all these in Java code. So on the bottom of the stack, we've got the dependent JavaScript. And that includes jMaki, and then you've got your component CSS and JS that are needed by those two. These things will all be included inside the jar files. And this is just explaining what we did. Oh, I forgot. Yes, we also have modules for it. And we could put more, depending. I actually don't think we've got a legend, for example, done in Java yet, so you'd have to actually use the JavaScript calls to do that. So that's something else we could actually add to this. All right. Let's show you how it works. So I've got the charting APIs available, and if you want to get these, the project that has the components is jMaki charting.dev.java.net. And I've already pre-built these libraries as GWT components, so you don't have to go out and learn how to do this in the scope of it. I've got these installed on my local system, so I'm not connections better. Save it a little bit there. Double check and see if that's what. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, and this link is available in the end of this presentation, so if you download it, or I'm going to try to also blog about this so you can get it a little earlier. We have a page on actually recreating what I'm going to do here. And it has that graphic that you saw there before. But since my internet's not working, I'm going to load this from my local file system. What this does is it details what I need to do. And modify the gwt.xml to inherit my components. But before I do that, I've got to add them to the project. So in the library section, just like you'd add any other Java jar file, what I'm going to do is add a jar file, and I'm going to add those components from my project. Now, I would have normally downloaded these, but we were getting free. So, jar file's name is jMaki gwt charting.jar. What this has in it, it has all the different files that I need to do the different chart types. So I've added these to my application. Now I need to add the dependencies. I'm going to copy this inherits line here. And the package name we use for jMaki charting is jMaki charting widgets. And that means that in jMaki charting widgets, I've actually got a file called jMaki charting widgets.xml. Excuse me. I forgot the mic was on. Sorry, everyone. In here, I've got all the charting dependencies, including the jMaki dev. All right, so I've added the dependency. Now, what I'm going to do is, just in case, I'm going to run this application. Now, it's not going to do anything because I haven't added this to the UI yet. But it will tell me the compilation is going to bark if I didn't get the dependency correctly in the gwt.xml file. So it loaded, it compiled. That means that that inherits was fine. So now I'm going to be a little lazy. And I'm going to pull in the code from this onload here. Or should we do this in pieces? I'll do it in pieces, just so you can see some of the completion here. Part of the reason people like JWT is you get a lot of this auto-completion and other things. So, that main entry code is a different file. I believe this is the one we want, right? Let me create a final pie chart equals new pie chart. I believe the constructor said I could have set size, big size. Now notice the completion is telling me I've got an error. And basically, if I look up the error, it's going to tell me it doesn't know, can't find it. So if I remember correctly, in NetBeans, I can say fix imports. And what NetBeans did right there is it found all the classes needed like pie chart, right? But it's still telling me there's a problem. This identifier with pie chart PC equals new. Now what's it complaining about? It's telling me it doesn't have the right constructor. And that's great. This is what IDEs do, right? They tell me when I'm wrong. And I don't get this when I'm using other libraries. I think it wants some access. Yes. And these need to be defined separately. And what I'm going to do here is just to save us a little time is I'm going to bring these in. Define these separately. Once again, I'm going to fix the imports. So I have a pie chart. Now the last thing I need to do in JWT is add this to my application. So what I need to do here is after the button, or after the label, I will add my pie chart. Oops, I keep forgetting I need to play this. So if I'm using the local copy, the local host of, or the Tomcat version that comes with JWT, I wouldn't even have to have done this next step. But because I'm deploying it to an application server, it actually wants to build a WAR file, so it's a little bit more involved. Let me see what I did wrong here. Hit root panel and pie chart. I create a new data set here when we click on the button, and that data set will update the pie chart. This is all being done through Java APIs. When I go back to my chart, I can click on Click Me here, and we get the difference. So let's just revert this back, and I will much easier task. So modifying it was that easy, and it went all the ways down. So our charting APIs actually have the ability to switch the colors and do everything. I mean, this doesn't come for free. You actually have to have the functionality also in the JavaScript. So like markers and other things, if you don't have that underlying functionality, you can add it pretty easy. And then what you do is you just create the Java API. All right, you've seen charting. That's ajax.dev.java.net is the core project for all this, but the charting is jMaki charting.dev.java.net. And ajax.dev.java.net, I know it's it's a mouthful, has this file on it. Let me see if I can. Looks like our internet's back up. So this is the jMaki website. And what you want to do is go to the developer site, and that's where this page is that we were looking at. All right, while this loads, I'm going to go back to this slide where on this last slide, I'll have these so you don't need to write it down. So it's actually got multiple things. All right. So just in summary, and it looks like we have some good time for questions. You know, we do provide some great support for integrating JavaScript from different people in different ways. If for anything, you know, the integration we've done with Dojo and the charting, I think is worthwhile for you to look at. Also, Yahoo as well. GWT is a great experience, especially if you want to do Java-centric IDE where you have code completion and it's going to tell you where you're wrong, except if you forget to add a data set. That was actually my bad. The two together, married, are a great combination in the sense that you can then have the best JavaScript and reuse things that are already out there today. You can still have your Java coding experience. Best of both worlds. You know, going away, I just tell you, if you're going to create components, try not to recreate the wheel. If you want to stay in a JavaScript world, jMaki provides a great solution. If you like Java development, you come from the Swing background, and you like GWT, one thing I found lacking, there weren't as many of those great components I saw at other places. But there is a way now of marrying those in, bringing those in using something like jMaki. So with that, I would love to open it up for questions. No questions?
What about the event mechanism?
So the event mechanism is fully functional. You have complete access to that. What I did in GWT is I actually didn't use much of that other than for the loading of the widget. So the event mechanism, they're still completely exposed, meaning you can still use the publish and subscribe, just as you always run.
With the GWT.
What you'd have to do in the GWT widgets is bind using that JSNI interface to a method that they would then react to.
So you would have to do that.
Yeah, you would have to add some of that, though it's not too hard to do. Now, Google is trying to make that interface a little easier, but it's not going to help in that respect. If you want to marry the two worlds, you're going to have something like the publish and subscribe class. So all the calls I made for the add data set, remove, updates, all happen through direct calls. I got an actual handle on the widget and actually called in. I could have used publish and subscribe as well. I just thought that it was a lot easier in this case to have a handle on, since that's part of the life cycle of GWT. It is, and you saw it today. That was the GWT for NetBeans plugin. It is not part of the core product. It's an add-on that's, I think, 29 KB. It does not come with GWT. You do have to have an existing installation of that. But it does provide the nice ability in an IDE to manage your files. And you do get the code completion and a lot of the other goodies that you'd expect. And GWT doesn't require that. They've got their own environment, but I think NetBeans does help.
How do you styles a widget?
Styling in widgets in GWT, it's hard to find where the CSS is, and I think that's part of the reason why something like jMaki would be more, how would you say, desirable. In the case of jMaki, you've got that component.css for the global theme for a set of widgets that you have complete access to in your application.
So you would put the styles in the Java code?
I would not. I would actually put it in the CSS where it belongs. Though if you write widgets from scratch in GWT, it actually goes in Java code. And there are two camps in the GWT world. Some that think, use what works, and in which case this kind of thing what I showed you was fine. And then you've got the hardcore, I want to write everything from the ground up in Java, in the Java code that is GWT, and use it. Well, the problem with that is a charting API, it takes years to develop. And my comment, use what's out there. It goes back to that don't reinvent the wheel. Because yes, you could, but one of the things, I think that's also led to the reason why there aren't as many widgets in GWT. But I think a lot more will come as techniques like this evolve and you can get better. We've been doing this for 6-7 months now, and It's not easy developing the components, but using them in JWT is very easy, and you get all the goodies. I mean, the things that the tool does for you to make your life easier definitely work. jMaki plugin for Eclipse, yes. The most recent version can be obtained from the exact same website as everything else. On the download section of ajax.dev.java.net, or you go to the main site and just hit the downloads page. We do have NetBeans plugin first, but right below it, jMaki Eclipse plugin. So this will tell you where the download URL is, and it will tell you how to install it. It has the same drag and drop functionality that I've showed throughout the day in NetBeans, but what it doesn't have is that configuration dialog box. So you'd have to know the properties yourself. We do have documentation on that. It's just a little more work. I work in the NetBeans group, so I have to accept that Eclipse is there because I also wear my hat as jMaki lead. And the most common question we get is, do you have Eclipse support? We do, and it is for the 3.2 Europa and better. So I don't think that's as big of an issue now. It was a few months ago when it was still brand new. And on that end, we're also working on having deployed versions of jMaki, so we can actually now have jMaki even without a server runtime. So we can run it from pure HTML. That's something you'll see in the next few weeks come out in our blogs and other things. Anything else? Yes?
JWT provides a way to develop Ajax applications to Java. So what's the missing things that is at this point of time in JWT so that we have to also use things like jMaki?
The missing link is components. They have a component model. You can write components, but it's just a limited set. And that's the only thing holding it back. And people are trying, but it's just, to be honest, it's hard. Unless you have something like jMaki, it's hard to know when the right JavaScript needs to be done at the right time. Whereas, we've got a whole project I've been working on for 2.5 years to just solve that problem.
So you have all the components that you get in jMaki. You get to use them in JWT too.
We only are providing right now the charting and the base class if you want to use something like our tag cloud, the accordion. So we have sample applications.
What about those Yahoo tables?
We have not done, but we have already a sample on how to do it. So basically, from the jMaki perspective, we're trying to see how much user demand there is for it. And as we see more of it, we had a pretty packed session in Java 1. I mean, it was 400 or 500 people just to hear about this topic. So we know there's interest. And we just want to see, we want to make sure before we invest a lot of time in doing this that people are going to use it. So there is a blog specifically on that topic on how to wrap a Yahoo calendar widget. So where you can find this, go to jmaki.com and look. Right now it's going to be on page 2. And what Carla did right after the presentation is she blogged about it. Let's see where she put it. Oh, look at that. It's the first one on the list. How to add a jMaki wrapped widget. This is basically using a Yahoo calendar. So it's there. And it was really easy for her to do. The one thing that she had a problem with was the ordering of when you put the things in the gwt.xml has to be the same as what we do in jMaki. So it has to be in the order that it gets placed on the page. Because with JavaScript, and this is one of the things that these components solve for you, is you have to have things in the right order. Because if you don't, some things won't get created when they need to be. And one of the issues I've had with the newest GWT, the one that's still in beta, is the order is not, how would you say, it's not followed as it should be. That's something that we actually need to communicate back to them. I'm sure there's a reason. They've also, like I said, they've got a new API for interacting with JavaScript that they're pulling in. Though you as developers, I think it's easier that you develop with something like a base class like what we've done, and then not worry about what happens in the code. It really should be us that does most of it. All right.
Is it possible to combine other Ajax toolkits with jMaki?
Of course. So right now we work with MooTools, Yahoo, both versions of Dojo, meaning the old 0.43 and the 1.1, We work with all the Google different assets, so the Ajax search, the maps, jQuery, prototype Spectaculus. If there's a library, we probably got ext.js is the one we're weak on, but it's more a licensing issue than anything. So we do their 1.x versions. The 2.0 I'd love to do, but we actually need to work with them to do that. One of the other things you always have to worry about when you include other JavaScript, you need to look at the licenses. Because if you're going to provide something, you might need to get a license for that product, or get in trouble somewhere down the line. So if you've got lawyers, and we do have lawyers looking at everything you're putting, that means it does need to have a open source license. And everything that we've exposed right now does. All right, I think my time is just about out. I'm here a little bit longer today, and I'll be here tomorrow as well. I've got one presentation on enterprise Ajax doing mashups with Java that might be interesting if you're into that. I'm going to talk more about the service side, how you actually get information out. So if you have time, drop by my talk. I believe it's mid-afternoon. Anyways, there aren't many talks going on. So. Anyways, hope you enjoyed it. Go out, write some components. If you have issues, definitely write the team and let us know what the problems were. If you are interested in more things like the Yahoo, let us know too, and we can help you along the way. It's really not that hard to do. It's the first one that takes. All right, thank you, everyone.